North America's longest river, the Missouri, flows out of the Rocky Mountain foothills, across the high, semi-arid northern Great Plains, and through fertile prairie grasslands before entering the Mississippi River just above St. Louis. Across its 500,000 square miles, the Missouri watershed touches ancient hunting grounds, once rich with beaver, river otter, fox, elk, and bison. Up through the first half of the 19th century, the Missouri was America's highway into the heart of the continent, the vital commercial link connecting scattered and remote fur trading outposts to the markets in New York, London, and beyond. At these trading posts, or forts as they were called, Native American hunters and trappers would bring their pelts and hides to exchange for precious manufactured goods, including cloth, blankets, iron tools, household goods, guns, powder, and shot. Each spring, boats on the Missouri ferried these trade goods to the forts and transported pelts and furs back to St. Louis. Illegal supplies of liquor were also shipped upriver, a trade that furmen used to their advantage with devastating and long-lasting impact on Native American communities. But liquor was not the only dangerous cargo carried upriver. In the spring of 1837, the 120-foot-long, 119-ton sidewheel steamboat St. Peter's left St. Louis, Missouri on its maiden voyage, an 1,800-mile journey up the Missouri River. Its destination was the trading post of Fort Union at the end of steamboat navigable water, where the Yellowstone joins the Missouri near the present-day border between North Dakota and Montana. The St. Peter's, operated by Pratt Chateau and Company of St. Louis, was loaded with supplies, trade goods, and passengers, making the annual trip to service trading posts at the center of North American fur trade all along the Missouri. Equally important, the St. Peter's served a vital diplomatic mission for the U.S. government. It delivered promised payments to various tribes in exchange for land cessions and cooperation, an important lever for maintaining peace with Native Americans living across the northern Great Plains. On this trip in 1837, the St. Peter's also carried an invisible and deadly cargo, variola major, the most virulent strain of the smallpox virus. Smallpox was a horribly cruel affliction. The most highly contagious strain passed easily from person to person, and mortality rates could range between 30 and 90%. Flu-like symptoms, fever, vomiting, body aches, and overall lethargy appeared about 12 days after exposure, then subsided. But within a few more days, painful lesions erupted on the victim's mouth, throat, and nasal passages before erupting into oozing pustules on the skin. Drinking and eating were painful, and for some impossible, complicating recovery and leaving many victims too weak to tend for themselves. By the 1830s, vaccination with cowpox was an effective and widespread preventative measure, but government vaccination efforts among Indians had only recently begun and had not reached many tribes along the upper Missouri. Secretary of War Lewis Cass restricted vaccination to more southern regions, setting the stage for a public health disaster. 13 days out of St. Louis, as the St. Peter's approached Fort Leavenworth, a crew member came down with a fever. A few days later, in an area known as the Black Snake Hills near present-day St. Joseph, Missouri, one of the Indian agents on board, suspecting smallpox, recommended that the ship's captain put the sick man ashore. But 33-year-old Captain Bernard Pratt, Jr., son of the company owner, refused. Pratt doubted that the fever was in fact smallpox. He also argued that discharging the hapless crew member in the wilderness would consign him to certain death from starvation. Pratt perhaps had other reasons as well. Returning to St. Louis and commissioning another boat was out of the question, as lower water levels in the summer would not permit a later passage upstream. He also knew that the cargo aboard the St. Peter's had to reach company forts, or the coming season would be lost. So the St. Peter's pushed on with its passengers, supplies, and deadly invisible cargo. As the St. Peter's slowly made its way upriver against the strong spring currents, it stopped at each trading post and U.S. government Indian agency, where it deposited needed supplies and trade goods, and as passengers got on and off the steamboat. Near the Council Bluff agencies, 3 Arikara women boarded to return to their families who had settled at the Knife River villages near Fort Clark. They, along with other passengers, fell ill with the smallpox and suffered through its symptoms, but the 3 women survived. By the time they disembarked, they were symptom-free but still contagious. When the St. Peter's reached Fort Clark, the crew members joined nearby villagers in an all-night frolic, as they called it, celebrating the arrival of the spring shipments. As they mingled, sharing company and stories, they also spread the disease. Francis Chardon was the bourgeoisie or manager of the American Fur Company trading post at Fort Clark. His terse journal entries during the summer and fall of 1837 record the relentless spread and devastating impact of the epidemic, especially among the Mandan, Hidatsa, Gros Ventre, and Arikara, whom he refers to as Rees, living in and around the nearby villages of Minnetonka and Sakakawea. In a brief journal entry less than 4 weeks after the steamboat St. Peter's had stopped at Fort Clark, Chardon recorded the first death among Indians living in the upper Missouri. This grim tally would rise to an estimated 20,000 over the next several months, impacting everyone living in the northern Great Plains and virtually driving the Mandan to extinction as an independent tribal entity.
Friday, July 14th. One of the warmest days that we have had this summer. Weather smoky. A young Mandan died today of the smallpox. Several others has caught it. The Indians all being out making dried meat has saved several of them.
Smallpox had last visited the Mandan during the epidemic of 1781, 56 years earlier. Younger Mandans born after that epidemic had no acquired immunity, leaving them particularly vulnerable and defenseless as the disease burned through the densely populated villages. It fell to the old to care for the young. As younger men who had been the hunters and younger women tending the crops could no longer bring in enough food to feed the village, conditions rapidly worsened.
Friday, August 11th. Mandans all crossed to the other side of the river to encamp, leaving all sick in the village. I keep no account of the dead, as they die so fast that it is impossible. Wednesday, August 16th. Cold for the season. Fire very comfortable. Several men, women, and children that have been abandoned in the village are laying dead in the lodges. Some outside of the village, others in the little river not entered, which creates a very bad smell all around us.
The epidemic reached far beyond the confines of the Knife River villages. Continued hunting, trade, and travel all contributed to spreading the virus to other tribes. And, as had always been the case, disease followed war and conflict.
Tuesday, August 15th. The war party of Rees and Mandans that left here the 26th of June all came back today, having killed 7 Sioux, men, women, and children. It appears that the smallpox has broke out amongst the Sioux, as some of the party, on their way back, was taken sick at Grand River, having caught the disease from those that they butchered.
Chardon records how the Indians tried to cope with the nightmare they were experiencing through dance and ritual, self-administered treatments, and finally, despair.
The Mandans and Rees gave us 2 splendid dances. They say they dance on account of their not having a long time to live, as they expect to all die of the smallpox. And as long as they are alive, they will take it out in dancing. The Rees are making medicine for their sickness. Some of them have made dreams that they talked to the sun, others to the moon, Several articles have been sacrificed to them both. A young Ree that has been sick for some time with the smallpox, and being alone in his lodge, thought that it was better to die than to be in so much pain. He began to rub the scabs until blood was running all over his body. He rolled himself in the ashes, which almost burnt his soul out of his body. 2 days after, he was perfectly well. It is a severe operation, but few are disposed to try it. However, it proved beneficial to him. Saturday, August 19th. Amanda and his wife killed themselves yesterday to not outlive their relations that are dead. I was in hopes that the disease was almost at an end, but they are dying off 8 and 10 every day, and new cases of it daily. Where it will stop, God only knows. Sunday, August 20th. Sprinkled with rain, 3 more died in the village last night. The wife of a young Mandan that caught the disease was suffering from the pain. Her husband looked at her and held down his head. He jumped up and said to his wife, "When you was young, you were handsome. You are now ugly and going to leave me. But no, I will go with you." He took up his gun and shot her dead, and with his knife ripped open his own belly. 2 young men, Rees, killed themselves today. One of them stabbed himself with a knife and the other with an arrow. Thursday, August 31st. A young Mandan that died 4 days ago, his wife having the disease also, killed her 2 children, one a fine boy of 8 years and the other 6. To complete the affair, she hung herself. Month of August. I bid you farewell with all my heart. It is the wish of humble servant that the month of September will be more favorable. The number of deaths to the present is very near 500. The Mandans are all cut off, except 23 young and old men.
Despite Chardon's wishes to see the end of the epidemic, the smallpox raged on. The disease affected everybody, Native American and white alike. No one could escape. Fur traders who had been previously vaccinated or had acquired immunity during their own earlier bouts with smallpox remained unaffected during the 1837 outbreak. This condition raised suspicion and resentment among the Indians, who saw their villages devastated. Chardon's journal records rising tension between the fur traders and the natives as the death toll rose.
Friday, July 28th. Rain in the morning. This day was very near being my last. A young Mandan came into the fort with his gun cocked, and secreted under his robe with the intention of killing me. I am upon my guard. The Rees are outrageous against the Mandans. They say that the first Mandan that kills a white, they will exterminate the whole race. I have got 100 guns ready and 100 pounds powder, ready to hand out to them when the fun commences. Sunday, July 30th. Another report from the Gross Ventress today say they arrived at their village and that 10 or 15 of them have died, 2 big fish among them. They threatened death and destruction to us all at this place, saying that I was the cause of the smallpox making its appearance in this country. Monday, August 14th. A Mandan chief came early this morning and appeared to be very angry, telling me that I had better clear out, with all the whites, that if we did not, they would exterminate us all. I told him that we would not leave the place, and that if they were disposed to kill us, to come on quick, that we were ready for them at all times. Wednesday, August 16th. A Ree that has lost his wife and child threatened us today. We are beset by enemies on all sides, expecting to be shot every minute.